Good Friday morning of the what day is it? The 15th week in Ordinary Time. Okay. Anyway, I'll read the gospel to you today. Jesus was going through a field of grain on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and he began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "You see, your disciples are doing what's unlawful to do on the Sabbath." Now Jesus said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? How he went into the house of God and ate the bread of offering, which neither he nor his companions, but only the priests could lawfully eat? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests serving the temple violate the Sabbath and are innocent? I say to you, something greater than the temple is here. If you knew what this meant, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned these innocent men. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." It's an interesting phenomenon. You see, the Pharisees were actually the great, and you know this, I've said this to you a million times, the great restorers of the law. And they were very, very rigoristic about it. They had to be. And apparently the disciples were, in fact, violating the Sabbath by working, as it were, taking grain and eating it, okay? See what they were doing? They were hungry, began to pick the heads of grain, and within the narrow confines of the law, that was not permitted. So they were breaking the law. And Christ diminishes the importance of that for something greater, namely, what I want to say, namely being with him, who is, and in fact, the Lord of the Sabbath. I think what there is he said here, the priest, he says, "I say something greater than the temple's here. I desire mercy, not sacrifice." That's a very, very important lesson. Not taken away from sacrifice or the law, but the more important thing is mercy and kindness and love. I have to say, I'm not doing a good job this morning. I'm sorry. I'm stumbling on my words. But I have to say, when I see these texts, very often I think of my young life, when I was really, really, really burdened by scrupulosity. I mean, really badly. And part of it was fostered on us by the teachers we had in school, especially the religious order, the nuns, etc. And they were great women. But it was the culture of the church. It was the church in its revival. They had to restore the church, and it began under the Leo XIII, and it began in the 19th century. And so there was a rigorism about it. Mass on Sunday, you had to get there before this, not after that, whatever. And it was foisted on us, and it was fostered. And we believed it. That's why the confessions on Saturday, the confessional line was long. People were confessing their sins. And I'm sure a lot of them were like mine. I told you the story, didn't I? That I went to confession at St. Anthony's. I was a kid, all right? I must have been 12 or 13. I don't even know if it was that. Anyway, Al and I and whoever, Pete, we were going down Washington Avenue. Some guy sprayed water on me with his car, and I called him an SOB. Well, of course, that's a mortal sin at that time, okay? Good grief. Anyway, I remember going back to confession. I told you this story. So any of you this is new to you if you've not been listening to these things very often. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 9 minutes since my last confession. I used bad words on this guy. And the pastor the confessor said, "You're so weak. 3 Our Fathers, so weak." I think you guys said, "Oh, son, come on." You see. It took the order for that to get to that stage in my life to realize it's love and mercy God seeks, not blind and obedience, blind obedience in that sense. If we're obedient to anything, and that is the love demanded at a given moment, caring, not whether you drop the F-bomb here or there, That's, See, one of the dangers in life is the trivialization of religion. And one of the problems years ago, not anymore, but if you're old, you're going to recognize it. If you're young, you won't, and you shouldn't. And that was the way we trivialized the confessional. How many times did you do this? How many times did you do? And in many ways, some of the sins we were confessing were very, very minor. They were human flaws. The confessional should have been a learning experience, not a penitential experience left to itself. See, that priest was a wonderful man, but he had no business telling me I was so weak. In fact, he should have laughed. If it came to me, I would have said, oh, God, did you really? You see? Oh, come on. And the thing that is so striking about it for me is the 50s were not an innocent time. It wasn't that somehow we were innocent in saying the F-bomb or dropping or swearing something was horribly evil. We just came out of the Second World War, where 8 million Jews got gassed. 80 million people were slaughtered, civilians and soldiers. We just came out of the second major war in human history, 2 world catastrophic wars. And in the 50s, we had throwing Korea. And you're worried about the F-bomb? Not the H-bomb, but the F-bomb? That doesn't create a deep conscience. What it does, it creates scrupulosity. It trivializes the moral adventure. It trivializes it. Not that you want little kids or anybody else cussing up a storm, but you want them to reflect on the real moral issues of their time. Fidelity to their spouses, to their children, fidelity to your friends, looking out for each other, being faithful to the commitments you've made, actively living an honorable life, being a good citizen, flawed but good. I mean that, and I think we've come a long way in the right direction. We don't hear confessions like we used to where they were lined up. But you're not hearing trivia either. People confess what is real. That's what that sacrament is there for, to lift one's burdens. But they are burdens, to give somebody back, not their innocence, but hope for a morally good life. The sacrament, the grace of the sacrament. It's not innocence. We're not innocent. We're never innocent. But we are not condemned to the guilt of the past. But we're given an opportunity to live into the future in the companionship of Christ and with the companionship of Christ. I'm not saying that right at all. Anyway, just a reflection. I think we live in a much better time than we did in the 50s. Although some old-timers see, and I saw young clergy think of the 50s as an ideal time. They were not. They were not. The first half of the 20th century was a very bad time. Wars, terrible, horrible, beyond horror. And even the church, where she played a magnificent role in the civilization of people. Jesus, in many ways, saved the world. And the other side, too, and they have to put it in its own time and place. It also had a very legalistic approach to one's conscience. And I think now we seek to live a moral life, not a canonically pure one, but a moral life, a sense of moral adventure and commitment. I think we live in a better world now, a better time within the life of the church. I really mean that. We're not as strict, but I think we preach a much more Christ-like gospel, put it that way, when it comes to human sin and redemption and forgiveness.